Over the past 25 years, over 40 million Americans have stopped going to church.
And it's not for the reasons that you would think.
Hi, I'm Stacey McLaren.
I'm John Beeson.
And this is God in the Gray, a place where we discuss religion, spirituality, and all of the topics where we find God in the gray areas. We consider this a conversation around the dinner table, and so we encourage you to pull up a chair and become a part. Drop your questions below. We're so glad that you joined us. So study after study keeps coming out, and we see that 40 million Americans in the last 25 years have left the church. That is not an insignificant number. That's like the biggest transformation in religion, like religious transformation in a long, long time. Do we know why? What is going on?
Yeah. Well, and to give credit where credit's due, the most significant study on this was done by Ryan Burge and others, and you can check out that book, The Great Dechurching, great book. And absolutely right. It is the most significant religious transformation in American history. They say greater than the first and second Great Awakening and the Billy Graham revivals combined, just in reverse. And you think about that, and immediately what springs to mind are, these friends and the reality of those who've left the church in maybe kind of some significant ways. You think about the rise in popularity in the new atheism in the early 2000s, the significance of those who maybe had their faith broken over these types of questions. You think about those who, the significance over these past 25 years in scandal after scandal breaking in the Roman Catholic Church, Southern Baptist Convention. I mean, no one was left untouched by church scandals, and they continue. And you think of those who've left the church in terms of the response to that. You think of the Me Too movement. You think of racial injustice, and you think of all of these kind of huge bombs that have hit the American church of the last 25 years, and you say, surely that must be the reason that people have left the church. But actually what the studies show are very mundane reasons that people have left the church.
Yeah, we wouldn't think that they would be as mundane as they actually are, but truly they are simple reasons, and in some ways understandable, and yet I think we have to address them. So one of them is moving. Of course, if you are moving away to a new city, even a new part of town, finding a church near you, that's hard. It can be a daunting task. And so just the mere act of moving and taking that pause to get resettled creates space where you don't engage. I think another one is inconvenience. When I think about inconvenience, I think of Sunday morning youth sports. Like either you have to get up super early to go to an early service before sports start, or you go on another day of the week if your church offers it. And life is just busy, and so it is inconvenient to add another thing in, and it seems like church is the first thing to go. And that's kind of sad. Another thing is maybe your friends leave. Maybe for whatever reason, maybe they move or they experience some, significant change in the way they view church and they leave. And those were your connection. Those were your people. And maybe you hang in for a couple of weeks, but suddenly it's not the same. My people aren't here. Therefore, I don't want to be here. And it's easy. Divorce is another option. One spouse maybe stays at the church that's been their home church, and the other one feels it necessary to leave, but doesn't engage in another community. There's a lot of...
My experience with divorce, usually both leave.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, that's so sad.
Yeah.
So that means that not only are the adults disengaging, they have now pulled their children out of that as well. And again, they're really mundane, simple reasons. Like you may be going through one of these right now. The idea is it creates a habit, and it's easier to stay home. It's easier to sleep in than it is to get up, get dressed, and go, as I often call it, go people. But it's a habit of disconnection, and that's not a good thing.
Yeah. And I mean, we bring this up as you actually went through the top 4 reasons that people state in surveys that they have left the church. And so we're not spitballing here. It's not just kind of our feeling or anecdotally what we've seen, or like, this is actually, studies have shown these are the top 4 reasons. And again, that doesn't diminish some of these significant things. And we've done a number of videos on those significant things: church abuse and all sorts of gender questions within the church. All those things matter. But the reality is none of those are top 4 reasons. The top 4 reasons are all pretty mundane. Again, not to diminish those things, but let's kind of look at that. Let's wrestle through them. I want to wrestle through them with those who have left the church. If you're watching right now and you aren't part of the church community and you hear those 4 and you're like, oh, yep, I'm number 3 or I'm number 2 or like that was me. Let's process that. And then I want to process it through if you're someone in the church, kind of the way to think about that and kind of the opportunities there. So first, if you're someone who's left the church, so let's just think about the moving piece, right? It is a habituated thing, and it's a scary thing. You find a place that you're comfortable in, you move, and then all of a sudden you're like, maybe try 1 or 2. They don't feel like your old church does. You don't have that same community, and it's like, no. And I'll just invite you through the expectation of that, which is to say, like, part of that, like, I just want to say, I'm so glad that it probably means you had really good feelings about the church that you came from, and you're struggling with churches that can't match up. But reflect on this. It's the reason that mattered and that church that you came from was so impactful was because the time that you spent there. And my hunch is, while you'll never replicate that, it's just never going to happen again, you're going to have new relationships that require an investment over time. And don't write a church off just because it doesn't feel like the other one. It can't. You can't step into that place where you have the same social network. You just can't replicate that. And then let me give this another lens also. For most of us who watch this, there's probably a move in our future. We don't know when that will happen. I have a 21 and a 19-year-old, and so it's unlikely that they're going to just stay put for the rest of their lives. They're gonna move at some point. And so I would encourage you to think about your move a little bit differently. Think about it in terms of the church. Maybe instead of choosing a job and then looking for a church, look for a church as you look for jobs and see if there's a looks like a healthy community that's in that same neighborhood. Look for a church as you look for a place to buy a home. Like maybe your decision on a home ought to be anchored around a church instead of vice versa. And think about it a little bit differently. But I'd encourage you to maybe start upending some of the ways that we typically do things so that you can kind of buck conventions here and not be pressed out of community almost kind of accidentally. And that's the reality of a move.
Yeah. One thing I would add to that even is, like, going back to that DNA of the church that you've left. Just remember that church wasn't the church you've left when you arrived there. And so the church you're joining is not going to be the church it will be without you there and a part of it. Like, you get to be a part of that growth. And so that's always important to remember. I think these are good reminders. We can all get drawn into the mundane things of life, and we can see how it pulls us apart. But if we're inside the church and we know that we have people in our lives that maybe we know they've been at church, we know they've left, we talk to them, maybe they're neighbors, we talk to them on the sidewalk, we know they've got a church history. Like, I think it would do us good to consider, who is that one person we can talk to and invite? And what is an ask to come to church sometimes is a hard ask. So what's the easy ask? And I would say, and I think you would agree, a service project, a service time. Most churches have those, whether it's on the weekend or during a weekday. I know here in Tucson at New Life, we're getting ready to have our all-church service day where we actually are the church. We aren't in the church. We are at a school being the church. And so that is an easy ask. Come join me. You want to come and hang out with me and help, paint a wall, dig up some weeds. But I think inside the church that we would do well to look around and see who are the people in our lives, in our circle, in our sphere, that we can speak into and invite them to come. And maybe they'll stay at our church. Maybe they won't, but maybe that starts the spark to get them to start looking again.
Yeah, and you can even look at this, right? So you have a move, you have someone who's going through a life change, and so look for those people. If somebody's just moved into your neighborhood, an easy time to invite them over, get to know them, and invite them to church. Somebody's going through a divorce, through a significant life change, through the loss of a child, anything that can kind of cause that social disconnection. Just remember, it's a good time to navigate that place. Invite them in, invite them to church. And then I would, flip it back on the other side in an encouragement piece. Studies say about 3/4 of people are yeah, if a friend invited me to church, I'd go. And so you're likely to get a yes. I would also say, if you're on the outside looking in, and you're like, well, I don't even know where to start. What would be the church that I would go to? I don't know. Why don't you start there? Who's a friend that you have who's a Christian that you respect, that is engaged in a local church? Instead of worrying about that whole fear of navigating into a church that you don't know, reach out to that friend. Say, hey, do you mind if I join you? I promise you, they'll say yes. Mm-hmm. They would love to have you join them. And so find your way into a community, through that friendship.
That's so awesome. We are so grateful that you chose to watch today. We certainly hope that you will reach out to somebody if you are seeking a church. Like John said, reach out to somebody, ask them if you can attend with them. We hope that you find the church where God meets you right where you're at. Once again, thank you for joining us. We want to remind you that we are real people at a real church in Tucson, Arizona at New Life Bible Fellowship. And again, we do consider this a conversation around the table. If you have any questions, please drop them in the comments and we will answer them as they come in. We will link all of the books that we talked about in the show notes, and we encourage you to hit that like and subscribe button so you don't miss an episode. Thank you for joining us.